Thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am thrilled to have you all here joining us, ghosts and ghouls and guests all alike. What a special time of year, right? The leaves are changing, things are happening. We're going to be talking about L&D. This is my favorite time of year. I hope you can see that we're a little bit festive here. I don't have a costume on other than this COVID haircut. That's scary enough. I will just throw that out there. So don't be alarmed and don't be afraid of my COVID haircut. We're going to be talking about some great stuff today. Really, really, really excited to have you all join us for the next 60 minutes and set this time aside to talk fun and loosely about this idea of the L&D monster and things that we deal with in our L&D lives all of the time. So excited to get in and get started. Sam's on. There we go.
Yeah,
okay, so now we're all here. The gang is all here. My crew is
Oh,
here. We're ready to rock. We're excited about all the things we're going to bring to you today. So let's start there. Before we jump into the deck and we jump into all the great content that we have for you today, let's introduce the cast of characters here. My name is Mike. I run all of the post-sales customer experience stuff at SAP Litmos, including like the onboarding and the account management and customer training and so forth. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I have a learning background. My master's is in instructional design and technology. So I am a learning nerd at heart. I will throw that out there and say it because that's exactly what I am. I love learning. I love the idea of getting people to access their potential and figuring out how we can give them what they need to make that happen. And especially in this world virtually, right? Across the great internet divide. So that's me. Turn it over to Josh real quick. And let's just go around real quick, introduce ourselves, and then we'll jump right in.
Yeah, and I'll make it short because we have a lot of monsters to cover. But my name's Josh, and I work with Mike on the training team for SAP Litmos. I'm in charge of a lot of the content that we use to train our learners, and in that we see a lot of these monsters come out in our learners, and also just kind of dealing with customers and understanding learning situations. So pleasure to meet you. I'm an instructional designer, UX designer here at Litmos, and I'll turn it over to Sam to give her a little intro.
All right.
Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Well, firstly, make sure y'all can hear me okay.
We can hear you.
Great, great. I apologize. I had some technical difficulties. Of course, Murphy's Law, right? Right when you don't want to have technical difficulties, you have them. So hi, everyone. Happy to join today. My name's Samantha Lang, and I am the content director for SAP Litmos. And I always like to clarify that is in reference to marketing content. So we have, as opposed to learning content. So we have a whole awesome separate team that produces all of our learning content, all that awesome SAP Litmos training content. But I'm responsible for all things written through the Litmos marketing team.
Awesome.
So big shout out to all those emails that you're getting and the wonderful descriptions of this particular webinar all come from Sam and her team who designed all these pretty slides you're about to see, right? And again, we're practicing what we preach here. When we're talking about learning and design, you're going to see a little later down the road that just making things look really cool like this can have a big impact to help slay some of these monsters that you find in your L&D. So before we get started, let's have a little haunted housekeeping. Lots of puns today. It's gonna be it's gonna be punny. You're gonna love it. Little haunted housekeeping items here. If you want to ask some questions, feel free to do so. We're gonna be taking some questions and looking at them throughout the presentation. We got a lot of content, so we're gonna be zipping through it quickly. But if you have questions in regards to any of these learning monsters that come up for you, or how you think that if you want some advice on how to deal with them, we'll get as many as we can today while we're on the line. And then, of course, we're all reachable and approachable. So after at the end, you can get our contact info and hit us up if you have any questions beyond that, because our job is to help you be successful. Whether you're a Litmos customer or not, we want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to slay these monsters. And again, this is tongue in cheek, lots of fun, but there is a lot of basis for what we're about to say, right? We might introduce it in a fun way with the zombies and werewolves and those kinds of things, but these are things that I'm sure you can relate to, being learning professionals and things that you see all of the time. So one other thing that even my crew here that we're that's going to be helping doing this don't even know about is that I'm going to be doing some dad jokes throughout the whole thing, Halloween theme. So they don't even know it's coming. That's right, I'm dropping it on them too. So we're going to jump in and we're going to do some dad jokes so you could take these and feel really excited about them when you tell your kids, because I know some of them you will. I know you will. Okay, so with that said, each one of us is going to take 2 or 3 of these learning monsters. We're going to go into depth into the things that you can in describing them, and then into the things you can do to help try to coax them back from the monsterdom, get them back to being just great learners again. So we're going to start with Josh and the Frankenwhine. Is that right, Josh? You're starting out. So before that, though, dad joke time. Are you ready? Why did Frankenstein's monster go to the psychiatrist, everybody? He thought he had a screw loose. Yes, okay. They're only going to get worse from here, so you might just want to turn it off. No, I'm just kidding. Stick with us. It'll be fun. Josh, over to you for the Frankenwhine, our first in the series of 8 monsters. Go for it.
For the first monster out of the woods is Frankenwhine. We've all seen this monster before. We've all heard of this monster, heard from this monster. And I personally have actually been around many Frankenwhiners. And what a Frankenwhiner is a learner who likes to kind of complain about every training task. So think about not just the standard compliance training tasks, but maybe even the fun training tasks. I remember at Litmos when we were all able to actually be together in person. Oh, miss those days. We had a lot of like in-person trainings that were all about leadership skills, tons of fun stuff, and we pretty much encouraged everybody to join it. And in the crowd, there were a few Frankenwhiners. They even asked me specifically, said, Josh, do we really need to do this? Is this really relevant? You know, what my job is? And first of all, I'm like, you know, I work on the training team, right? And like, I'm kind of one who's putting this together, helping put this together. Second of all, yeah, that whine, not only do I hear it, but other people hear it, and it's actually really contagious. So Frankenwhiners breed other Frankenwhiners, because as soon as somebody hears somebody complaining about something, their whole perspective could change. They might have been stoked to take the training, to get into their environment, or maybe go into like a live session or seminar. But if they hear other people talking bad about it, or essentially complaining and whining about it, they're going to say, you know what, maybe this isn't all that I think it could be. Or maybe they're more so embarrassed that they're excited about it and other people think it's stupid. So that's really something to take into consideration. The whine is contagious. Now we're asking, what do they whine about? They may say that your training is too easy or not compelling, worth the time or worth my time. Maybe it's not rewarding. And why do they whine? Well, really, maybe they just want to be heard. That's something to consider about. So with that said, we're going to talk about how to save your learners with all these monsters, save your learners from all these monsters. Start with saving your learner from becoming a Frankenwhiner. I think the first thing you need to do is hear them out. And I mean this in multiple ways. Listen to your Frankenwhiners, talk to them in person, and maybe just try to understand why they're not happy about the training scenario. We have something specifically in our platform in a course, a little feedback button. If it's all set up and you're an instructor that's attached to this, you can click this button right here, and then you can send a message to the instructor or the person who administered that course. I've seen these messages come through because I've actually published a lot of courses in the dojo, and these are actually great. If you click send on this, it'll actually send me an email, and then we can actually spark up a conversation and fix the issue that they're whining about. The next thing is recommended courses. Now, this again is a twofold thing. We have it in our platform, but also we want to just recommend courses that are good for our learners and that are relevant. We have this widget on our dashboard that basically looks at your job title, where you are in the company, and also looks at like the trending and popular courses. And then it will show you courses that are relevant for you. And there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of make this work, but here's an example. Frankenwhine might be interested in lightning-powered electrified bodies, kick start it up when he's feeling sleepy. Last thing is, or second last thing is, offer compelling content that's well designed and meaningful. And this goes a long way and actually has a lot to do with just creating an overall and rewarding LX, which is a term for learner experience. There's also a term for UX, user experience. It's essentially the same thing. You want to really measure the learner experience from start to finish and understand if there are pain points or issues that they deal with when they are going through their training. Things that you can do to create a rewarding and engaging experience and also design well is, for example, take your certificates, make them engaging, really make them attractive. Also, we have the ability in our platform to totally customize your instance and make it relevant to your learners. This right here is our header for our event today. I'm actually going to be updating this very shortly after this webinar because you won't be able to sign up for this anymore, right? But this is what we have, and we kind of Halloweenify the dojo. So when you're in your training instance, kind of try to make it relevant to your learners and take these extra steps to create that engaging experience. I'll move on to the next one, Checkbox Zombie. But this next, I love zombies. It's one of my favorite monsters. But we have zombies also in our L&D department. Zombies that we see are these checkbox zombies. These are the learners that you have in your system that really just want to check the box. They want to kind of go forward and, oh, Mike's back. Let's see if his audio works.
Can you hear me?
Oh, really?
I'm so sorry.
But you just hop into the checkbox zombie. All the bullet points are right there in front of you.
Oh man, I'm so sorry. You know, this is it's Halloween, right? So these things happen, and apologies for that. Thanks for sticking with us. Sorry about. And you know what? All the stuff you missed that I was saying was so good too. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so here's the thing. If I cut out again, Josh, just start waving your hands and wave me off, like, because I'll just get going. Yeah, like do the monster mash or something to that effect. So where were we? Checkbox Zombie, is that right? We're excited about that for sure.
Zombie, yeah.
Okay. Checkbox Zombie is one that you've seen before, right? It's people that are just compliance driven. They're the ones that are really focused on just getting it done and getting out. And as you can see on the bullet points here, right? Lacking inspiration, they just want to get it done. And you typically don't hear anything from them, right? Because they just get in and get done and get out. Now, a couple of things with the checkbox zombie here, though. Like if you think about it, it's not just about them and their behavior. It's about their manager's behavior too. And I want to make sure that that's really clear here. And then it's a pull thread that you're going to hear down the road here in this conversation as well, is that that they're going to follow whatever the lead of their managers are. And a lot of times their managers are telling them just to get in there and get it done, right? So they're actually turning them into zombies. You know, they're biting them and it's like, and then they become zombies themselves. But there are ways that we can get around this. So let's head on to the next slide and take a look at each of these here. Yeah, Josh is driving here, so I'm going to let him drive. So a couple of great things that you can do is first try to break them out of this thing that they're doing all the time, is to try to make it meaningful. And oh, what do we got? Oh, there's a cat that went up on the screen right there. That was on purpose, by the way, is that you want these attention breaks, or this novel, like pattern interrupters is what we call. Oh, there's another one. See the cat's coming up there. And when we're building, oh man, and a third time even.
That's all.
When we're building out our content and we're thinking through the learner's experience, if you want to break somebody out of just I log in, I do the course, I take the quiz, I check the box, you need to give them a reason to break out of that, right? It's like I remember this commercial a while back where all the cell phones went down, like, and everyone's inside on their things, and then they opened their doors and they came outside and they were like, what? And then they started talking to each other, and you know, it was like, oh, it was this community came together on the block, and I'm thinking that's kind of what you got to do with these zombies, right? Is to get them to think through it and break them out of that, and by making things novel and interesting and fun and reviving their interest in learning, right? To get them to know that it's not just get in and get it done, because from a manager's perspective, There are definitely courses that I have my group do that are more CYA, right? I mean, that's why the company is like, you just got to have them done so that legally we can say that they did it, right? But even there, we can try to make those more fun and make them more interesting, and really try to connect them back to why they're doing the learning in the first place, right? And I think that we get, it's a timing thing, right? We just don't have a lot of time with our learners. So what we have to do is to try to really focus them back into why we're doing what we're doing. What is learning about, right? Why are we doing this? And one of the biggest things you can do in this, reviving their interest, is also checking back in with them. Think about that. How many times have you assigned these courses and never asked another question after that, right? You just don't. And so that tells you that I don't think it's important enough to ask you about it. Or so guess what? I mean, you probably aren't going to take it that seriously either. And the last little piece here that you can do to really focus in is to keep things consistent. That's that drip learning piece, right? That you're assigning things and you're giving them things to think about on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, but you're checking in enough that they realize that it's important, right? And a great example of this with the drip learning from our standpoint is we have like Litmos Assign, and we have these boosts that you see here. I love this one here, by the way. According to Harvard, Wade Davis, a living person can actually be turned into a zombie using the flesh of, it is a pufferfish. But this is a great example of a boost that after a training that you could set, and then it just automatically sends them questions weekly or daily or however you set it, which is pretty fantastic, right? But if you don't have Litmos now, that's okay. Think through this from a strategic standpoint. Think, how are we following up and keeping things consistent, following up on the learning so that they are broken out of that zombie stance, right? Litmos Assign is another great example of that, where we're assigning them things based upon their interests, based upon who their managers are, what role they have, that those kinds of things are becoming super, super relevant for them, which breaks them out of it again too. Because one of the things that I see that turns people into zombies the most really is the fact that they don't see relevance in what they're doing, right? So revive their interest. Provide some attention breaks and novelty, right? Think through your content a little bit and like, what's the experience I'm giving them? And would I zone out, right, and become a zombie myself? And then also think through it from the manager's perspective, which isn't on this list, but I'm adding it now because I think it's so important, right? Is that you think about, if you want to affect change on the learner level, you need to start with the manager level and make sure that they're on board, because if they're not on board, guess who isn't going to be on board? The other people that report to them. It's just the law of nature there. So hopefully all that makes sense. And by the way, what does a vegan zombie eat? Grains. Yeah. Come on, there's a second. Okay, all right. Maybe that's where my mic should have gone out, right? So that you can't hear my silly dad jokes. And I think I have this one too, right? The content mummy. So let's move on.
This is all you.
All right, let's just keep the ball rolling. I hope that I'm talking fast. I got some time to make up here because of my technical difficulties. So let's get into this. Now, the content mummy is your training content library downright ancient. This is a huge miss for a lot of folks, is that we think so much about the systems, the LMS, we think about getting them to check the boxes. We forget that the content is king here. It's like, think about your favorite restaurant that you probably can't go to anymore, but you can have DoorDash, or like to your, but think about that, right? You go back for a lot of reasons, and one of them, the biggest reason, is probably the food, but you also go back because of the ambiance, and you go back because of the service, but the food is pretty central to you deciding where you're going to eat, right? So when you think about the content mummy, it's the same thing with your learners. What are you feeding them? What are they? Is it dry and stale? Is it downright ancient? Have you looked at it lately? So let's take a peek at that real quick and some of the bullet points connected to the content mummy, right? That what I see a lot is that, let me give you another example. How many times have you gone to a website or a blog and you've looked at it and the last entry was like, I don't know, 6 months ago? Immediately you're turned off by that, right? You're just like, well, if they can't even keep it up to date, why am I focusing any attention on this at all? So when you're looking at this type of thing, the old outdated versions of courses, it's dry, it's drab, people don't, if you don't care about it, the chances are that they're not going to care about it and connect to it as much as you want them to, right? And you really need to think through that. So how are you bringing in topics that are today's topics, right? Like they're top of mind for us. A couple of things that, and of why, I mean, I think you'll probably relate to these pretty well, of why the content gets stale, is that smaller orgs, you might not have the time, right? You just can't keep it fresh because there's nobody to do it, to get in there and make that happen, right? But that is something that you need to spend some time on. And on the other side, companies as big as SAP, for instance, when I go into our training thing, it's a treasure trove of thousands and thousands of courses. There's too much content to manage on that side. So finding that happy medium and creating a system by which you're looking at your content quarterly, you're looking at, and not all of it, right? You're chunking it out little by little. You're unwrapping that mummy to see what's underneath and go, ooh, yeah, that needs to be changed. Is that you're putting some time into your content, because content is king. It really is, right? You can have the best environment in the world to have them come in and experience, but if what they get there is not relevant to them, or it's old and it's outdated, they're not going to have a great experience. And then you're going to be pushing them again, right? Like, you have to do this. They'll become what we just talked about, the compliance mummies, right? Or the compliance zombies. So here's a couple of things we can do on the content side. We'll get through this quickly now. So how to unwrap, I love it. All these little puns, it's good. Unwrap the content mummy. The first one is create a plan and start thinking through, and that's what I had alluded to just a second ago, is think through, is it a quarterly that you're gonna, that's how we do it in the dojo, by the way, with all the dojo courses. We look at them when new releases come out, and we look at them quarterly and say, we're gonna take a chunk and we're going to see if they're still good to go. Like, do we still support that and love it? And will our learners love that, or what changes we need to make? So create a plan to do that, to look at it, to break it into smaller chunks that are easily consumed, and just think strategically about your content. Discuss with an instructional designer. Love this one, is that I myself am an instructional designer, and I love having conversations with folks about like how to really grab the attention of the learner. But I think it's also not just the instructional designer about the content, but you need to bring in the web designer and the graphic designer and the Josh and the Sarah on our side, who built all these wonderful, beautiful little Lennies, the versions of them, all the different monsters, right? Is that they're the ones that can do what I can't do. Like, I can design the instruction, and maybe a lot of you can relate to me on this. I can put things in context and create the instruction so it makes sense to learn from, but to make it flashy and fun and memorable, I know where my limits are, right? And I pull in graphic designers for that. And so I would put that out to you and challenge you. So look to the people in your company. It may not even be the official graphic designer for your company. It could be somebody that's just really good at it that wants to help you, or somebody on your team even. So think about that, about bringing that in. And the last bit is, if you don't have the time for any of that, look elsewhere. There's plenty of content that has been professionally designed off the shelf that you can get from many different vendors, including us. But let the pros do it, right? If there are things around soft skills that you're just like, I don't have the time in order to build out these wonderful courses and in the way that I need them, then you can just grab them off the shelf and add them to your instance. So moving on to the next slide. Josh is driving.
Screenshot.
There you go. So, yeah, great screenshot. This is just an example from our SAP Litmos content of all the different courses, or some of the courses that you can get when you subscribe to that. But the idea being, again, not to make this a sales pitch, but look broader, right? Look outside of just what you can create to who's done it already, and then don't reinvent the wheel and use that stuff as you go along. So create the plan and be strategic. Discuss it with your instructional and your designers. And then in many cases, you can also look to outside content. Though it's going to refresh your content, it's going to keep it alive, and it's going to make those mummies look at that and go, okay, this is important. And it's, again, about building that relevance. So hopefully those are some helpful tips, some things that we do on our side to make sure that we don't have that we unwrap those mummies as we go along. So, you're waiting for the joke, aren't you? Why didn't the British boy's mother ever dress up for Halloween? Do you know? She was already a mummy. Oh, come on. Anybody? No. Okay,
I could have guessed that one. I was on the tip.
Did you like that one? Okay, moving on.
That's awesome.
She's already a mummy. Okay. All right, werewolf time.
I need to think of some dad. You better have a dad joke for a werewolf.
Oh, you want it? I'll give it to you now. What do you call a werewolf that doesn't know that they're a werewolf? An unaware wolf.
Oh.
Okay, let's get serious now. Are your learners howling for directions? Josh, is this you? Tell us about it.
I'll take this one. Yeah, this is the werewolf. Emphasis on, that's not a misspelling, that's a where. They're looking around for a where. Now, this is a learner that it's not actually their fault. It's actually on the person who creates the training environment and the training system that lends their learners to become werewolves. And what I mean by that is they've basically been bitten by a bad learning environment. So these are people, when you log into your training, you kind of want to know right away what classes or what courses, learning paths, or things to check out, what things are relevant to you. And you also want to know maybe what are highlighted, or what's the most important highlighted courses, things that you should be into or should be taking or looking at. So that's what the werewolf is missing. They're really confused on where to go after they log in. I've had this happen for me in many different, not just learning environments, many different applications. There's just no direction on where to go when you log in. And then they need to be told, this is a way to help them to be told what courses, learning paths are needed to get started and just kind of get going. So, and they're also just kind of just not sure what to search for when trying to find learning content. And that's a fair assessment for anybody who's like the content mummy issue with having a large organization with too much content, or even just not a updated library. You can have trouble navigating that and really finding what's relevant for you as a werewolf. So there's some silver bullets for the werewolf. Another little pun right there. I think the first thing that we need to do is to greet learners with a pop-up message or some sort of welcome message advising them on what's relevant to check it out. We have an remote readiness, or I'm sorry, an Adaptivity Academy. This is an academy that we put together that's actually free to use for everybody. You just have to put your email in there and you can sign up. And essentially, we built this to train people on coming back to the workforce, working in remote environment, while working in this new remote environment situation that we're all in right now after COVID. So there's a lot of courses on just building your brand career, remote working, and there's even some like health and safety tips. But when you get to this instance, you're greeted with a learner pop-up message, and this basically tells you exactly what you can expect here. This is just a screenshot, but that's actually a video animation that's going here. You can put a YouTube video there or some sort of other message if you want to, just giving your werewolves direction. So now when they log in, they know, hey, this is what I should be checking out. And then be smart with content tagging. This is a really great thing to do in your LMS system. I'm sure a lot of LMSs offer this. We have a way in courses, not only courses, but assets, learning paths, and collections, every different kind of piece of content, you can actually tag it with a word, and that word would be indexed in the search results. So this is actually a bit of a newer feature that is released. So this is some recently added benefits that you can, recently added feature that you can kind of use to enhance your user search and just kind of guide your werewolves to the content easier. And then design is super important. We've talked again before about the Litmos Dojo. That's kind of our shtick, what we've created and what we trained from. We use this a lot as an example of good design for a Litmos instance, but I would say a good design is something that is easy to understand. When you look at the page, within 5 seconds, you know where to go, what to look at, and you kind of get the gist of everything. And you could do that with adding a little HTML banner up on top of your courses and customizing it to add in messaging. And then the last bit right here is to just bundle all your trainings together in one place. And this goes for just different groups of training. So if you have an onboarding course and you have subsequent courses, just bundle that all together, and then also include things that you might think new hires would like that are not necessarily in the onboarding course. So just really being smart with actually bundling your training together. In our platform, we have collections where you can take assets, which are like PDFs, zip files, PowerPoints. You can group that with courses, and you can group those with courses, learning paths, and kind of group them all into one bundle, so your learners can easily see that bundle and know that that's the werewolf bundle. That's where the werewolf needs to go to start their bundle. So that was the werewolf. So again, make sure that you're smart about greeting your learners. Use content tagging. Be descriptive, not only with your content tags, but also in your course descriptions, because that helps with search indexing as well. And just also for somebody trying to look at the details of a course before starting, that's super important to kind of get that good content in there. That will provide them good guidance. And again, good design and just bundling it all together in one place. So that's it for the werewolf. And our next monster is the list ghost. I think, Sam, this was you, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to this spooky apparition.
Yes.
So the list ghost. So this is a tough learner to pin down, and the reason we are calling this particular monster the list ghost is because this is the learner that maybe you've seen this person's name in a list, like in an upload list that you've uploaded to your LMS, or maybe you've very minimally seen their name appear in some kind of activity reports, again, very minimally. But mostly this is the type of learner who's kind of just ghosting out on training. And this is certainly a learner that's not going to be proactively participating as far as giving feedback. And they're certainly not going to be seeking training beyond what is the bare minimum of what's assigned to them. So how do you get the list ghost to materialize? So I think we can go to the next one here, Josh. So how do you get the ghost to materialize? Well, and this is kind of a theme with several of our monsters, but you really have to make it matter. Little pun there. I didn't even realize I made that joke about matter.
Good. That's great. Good.
Just caught that one. So how do you make it matter? Well, as we've mentioned in some of the other characters as well, you can do the obvious best practices, like, of course, you have to have engaging, relevant content, right? I mean, that's how you make it matter. Make it so that someone says, this training actually helps me do my job better. That makes it matter. But in the case of the list ghost, where you're really going to have to kind of nudge the person beyond those obvious best practices, you can do some other things, like setting some clear consequences for people who ghost out. And Josh, if you don't mind, just kind of pop into the next one. So what can you do now? This is really basic, right? I mean, email, these things can be automated in the LMS. You can set up certain rules to email a learner who appears to be ghosting out on you. And you can even, I put boo, you can even call them ooh, right? Scary.
Oh, that's scary.
That'll really freak a millennial out. They don't even know this thing rings, right?
When Mike calls me, I freak out. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, oh God, why is Mike calling? He's slapping me or texting me.
Yeah, that's like, it's ringing. Oh my goodness. So you could do that. That, of course, is more on the manual side. So that's probably not going to be something you're going to be able to do, in large numbers. But what you can also do is you can configure escalation rules in the LMS. And now, what I would say before we talk about automating escalation rules is that I think, and Mike might have different comments on this, but I would say that escalating is really more of a last resort, just because you want to give the learner the opportunity to participate, rather than making it punitive, and rather than kind of getting someone in trouble for not doing their training. You want to give them multiple opportunities to voluntarily step in and participate if possible. Now, if that really, really isn't working and they're just totally ghosting you, then you may need to configure these escalation rules. Now, we have a screenshot, I think, here that shows you can set up your rules according to whatever triggers are going to need to happen, and you can set this text This can also CC, the LMS admin and that type of thing. So you can set these kinds of rules if you do have these ghosters who you really think are falling behind. And that, again, to step back to the more strategic thing, the reason you're doing this isn't to be the tisk police. It's because these learners are falling behind and they're missing out on your really valuable training content. So, and then there's one last thing that you can do, and we're joking around about the phone, but we all are so tied to our phones. We always have the phone, and so do your learners. I mean, you better believe it, so do your learners. So what you can do is resort to texting. And actually, texting may even be a more viable option, depending on your demographics. Texting may be a viable option to get the ghost to materialize, even than emailing, and perhaps certainly then calling. So you can set up text messages. In Litmos, we call this feature persist, but whatever your LMS is, you should be able to configure sort of automated text messages that you can remind your ghosters to get in there and take that training.
Can you hear me still? Yeah, everybody good?
Yeah.
Just checking before I start talking. We have a lot of customers now that are asking us to go this route. They say emails are dime a dozen, they get ignored, but now the text messages seem to be the things that draw their attention. And again, I think that what you're saying here, Sam, is this is all about visibility, right? So again, playing into the ghost thing is that you're calling them out and they're becoming visible and not hiding in the shadows and being transparent, but also there's visibility for the leadership as well, to see these folks and be able to do something and take some steps to bring them out. That's pretty cool. That's good. Hey, by the way, what is a ghost's favorite yogurt flavor?
Yogurt.
It's
blueberry. It's blueberry.
It's blueberry. Yeah, it's blueberry. You got it. Good job, Sam. Sam's got this now. That's really great. Moving on to the JACK-O-LEARNIN. We're just flying through this. We're doing all right on time, so let's just keep on rocking here.
Totally.
Right, the JACK-O-LEARNIN. This is my piece here. I want your learner to stay ahead of the Carve. I like this. Start with the joke. What do you call a good-looking pumpkin? Gorgeous, of course. Yeah, gorgeous. Anyway, okay, great. So the JACK-O-LEARNIN, let's take the broad strokes on this one here. This is that person that's a lot like me, that I want to learn everything there is to know and I want to learn it now, right? I'm a little bit ADD when it comes to learning because I want to jump from one thing to the next. I might start something and not finish it. You might have some of these people that do that. If you look at their record and you look in your LMS or whatever it is, and you see that they've started about 50 different courses but never finished anything, right? So those kinds of folks, that's this monster, and here are some ideas behind that. They love learning new things, trouble committing to a single item. They need guidance. So that's the big piece here, right? We need to keep them on track, make sure it's really focused, and here are some thoughts on that one. First of all, building guided training, right? So in your LMS, if it's Litmos or whatnot, you should have the ability to put together these different training paths for them, whether we call them learning paths. We have these things called collections, whatever it might be, but it's a way to bundle up and present to your monster, your learners, right? A wonderful and easy to follow way to go through that, right? So, and if you're doing that, that's the first step. They may not finish it, which is another thing we'll talk about in a minute, but building those out is the first step. Don't just say, go into the LMS, there's a lot of stuff, good luck. I think gone are the days that we do that because people just don't have time to jump in and be like, okay, I've got 2 hours to spare. I'm going to click around and just browse. It's more focused, more direct. Say, hey, I need you to go in there and look at this learning path. It's perfect for X, Y, and Z. Building the context, making it easy, and getting them in there, right? So that's the first piece of that. The second, using due dates and email reminders, right? So you want to set this step up if you haven't already in your LMS. It's an easy way to get them to be to continue to pay attention to it and not start something else, right? Again, assigning them stuff is another piece of that with these due dates so that they really only can focus on that stuff. What's interesting about, I mean, I'm sure you could do this in any LMS, but again, we have this one, this SAP Litmos, is that in there you can set up courses where they can self-assign, you can assign them, and they can see or not see courses depending on what you want them to see, right? So sometimes you just take away the ability for them to see other things, keeps this kind of learner focused on that. And then finally, the last one on here is using the assign training metrics widget. So for us, again, this is pretty specific to Litmos users. So, but the idea is being that you want them to be able to see really quickly, to be able to jump onto their dashboard and see what they've got going on. So I think we have a screenshot on the next the next page of this. Yeah. So here's an example of what you might see in an LMS, right? That your learners of a best practice that you'd want for learners, regardless of the LMS that you choose, is that they can jump in and be like, okay, this person has 5 things to do. They've completed 8 of them and they have none overdue, which is really great. Actually, I feel like that person's on track. They can quickly and immediately see that. So if you don't have that set up, that's something to keep these folks on track too. These ones that are just like, what's next? What's next? What's next? I started this, because then they'd see that they're overdue. You know, like if you follow the other best practices of putting due dates and stuff like that, that would be red, and you would see very quickly that they would see that they need to get back on track with that stuff. So guided training, set it up in a way that it's easy for them to follow. Use those due dates and reminders, and then make sure that you have a visible way or a way for your learners to see how they're doing, and they can measure themselves, so it's not just about you, right? Because you can't be the hammer all the time, or the managers that are directly leading these people can't be the hammer all the time. They need to have a way to be able to self-pace as well. So for us, I think that's a really great way to look at those kinds of learners.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're moving
Look
on
at that.
to the
See?
next one.
Yeah, moving on. That's good. What's the next one? Oh, the culture vampire. This is a good one.
Sam's going to speak to this scary one.
Hey, Sam, where does the teenage vampire like to shop? Do you know? Forever 21.
Oh,
that's good.
You stumped me on that one. I only got one riddle right.
All right, back to the serious business.
Very serious. Okay, so the culture vampire, personally, and I think Mike would agree with this, and you've hinted at it before, that I think the culture vampire is possibly the most insidious ghoul of all the L&D monsters. Very insidious, because this particular monster is often in the leadership ranks. This is possibly even an executive. So this person hangs in the top echelons, and what that means is that they can really proactively suck the lifeblood out of your training culture, because they have power, they have influence. So if they are proactively undermining the value of training or the importance of training, this is a big monster to take down. But of course, we're going to have some recommendations on how to do that. So the culture vampire just really doesn't see the value of training. So obviously there's going to be some education there that you're going to need to do, and we'll talk about how to do that. And this particular ghoul also doesn't really see training as work. They see training as something that's like an add-on or a nice to have or an after-hours activity, but it's really not part of your core responsibility of your job, which we at Litmos would strongly disagree with, right?
Totally.
So, yeah, and Mike, you hinted at this before, but often, like, the culture vampire could breed a team of checkbox zombies.
That's true.
Because, so the culture vampire may have a team of checkbox zombies who are just hurrying to do their training because they're kind of thinking they're not even supposed to be doing it anyway, or not during regular work hours. And we heard a really interesting anecdote from one of our analysts recently, who was talking about the fact that actually these new pandemic and work from home conditions are helping people who have a culture vampire as their boss. Because if you're in the office and you're in the headquarters or what have you, and you've got someone, your boss, the vampire, lurking behind you and seeing what's on your screen, and you're not really supposed to be doing training, you may turn it into an after hours activity and something that you try to sideline. But now what we've heard is because people are at home, and if you had that type of boss in the past, now you're actually doing your training, even if you were a former checkbox zombie, and you may even be seeking additional training because you can, and because now you've been given kind of the freedom and the opportunity to seek it. So, okay, so how do you slay the culture vampire?
Oh.
So the way
It's a tough one.
to split, what was that, Josh?
I say that's a tough one, right? Because again, you said it's somebody in a leadership influence. I think you used the perfect words there. Somebody who has power, influence, and is in a leadership position that people look up to. Again, we're creatures of habit, and we like to model behavior as human beings, right? If you're going to model whatever your manager is doing, and what's important to them is important to you. So I think this is a really, really important one to talk about, Sam. This is a good one.
Well, and I almost think, Josh, like a low level or like a vampire in training is the Frankenwhiner, right? The Frankenwhiner,
vampire in training. I like that.
Frankenwhiner, the Frankenwhiner is a vampire in training because they might not have the influence, but you even said even the Frankenwhiners are contagious, but they may not have the cultural influence that a vampire has, which is why we're calling this character the culture vampire, because they do have the power to really suck that energy out of the whole learning culture. So okay, so how do you slay this vampire? It's all about establishing value, and the way that you're going to show value, typically if it's an exec or it's a higher up manager, it's data. Data is like garlic, right? It's the garlic to the vampire.
Sunlight. They're like sunlight, right? Here's the data. Look, they love it.
Yep. And this is the thing.
Hate it.
Even if what's that, Mike?
Nothing. Go. Sorry.
So even if you are not if you're not much of a data head yourself, it's kind of one of these things about learning communication styles. You may need to really shift your communication style in order to communicate well with the exec, and that means talking numbers. Even if you're not super comfortable doing that, that's maybe something in your own upskilling that you work on, being able to communicate the data points, because you're going to need to show some kind of value and some kind of ROI to these people. And then Josh, if you jump to the next point there. So how do you do that? Now, some of this, again, in Litmos, you can build reports, and we've got a screenshot here, or you can set up your reports to show basic things like activity levels and how frequently people are interacting with the system to paint the picture of value, to say, hey, our people, our learners are really leveraging the LMS. They're getting a lot out of this. And that's just at a basic level. And showing ROI is going to be unique to every organization. Depending on the depth of your reporting, you may be able to show some really specific ROI. For example, you may have data in regard to, say, your sales team. If a salesperson has been trained on this particular product, that may directly correlate with their ability to sell it. So if you have that type of really specific, what I would call like people to performance data, that stuff is gold. I mean, that'll drive a stake in the heart of this vampire, right? So if you have that level, if you can get to that level of people to performance and show that training is the direct line there, then by all means, that's how you do it. So I think the last point here is that ultimately, because these people do have influence and they do have power, this can be like a campaign for you, a personal mission, where you we were making a Volturi reference here, a Twilight reference, but if you can actually—
Some of you know what that is.
Twilight. If you can actually flip this person from being a resistor or a deterrent to the success of your program, if you can flip this person and actually show them enough data and get them to really see the value over time, you could get these people to become champions of your learning program, which is really the highest goal here. Would go for the head vampire and get them to become champions of your learning program, your learning culture, because that'll get you the energy infused back in. If you can get these people saying, yeah, we want our people to be super juiced on training, and I'm going to stand behind it from an executive level.
Totally. That's fantastic, Sam. Great recap of Culture Vampire. Let's go to the final monster. the Wicked Witch of the test.
The Wicked Witch of the test. Hey, do you know what a witch's favorite subject in school is? It's spelling. Oh, best for last. Oh, yes. Best for last. Okay, sorry. You know, it's fun to. I had a minute there to read through the questions, right? So we're gonna get to some of them hopefully, but I'm happy that you enjoy the jokes. It seemed people like, oh, that was. I got an oof in one of them, and I had to agree with that. So that's good. But anyway, moving on.
That's awesome. This last monster is a very important monster, and it's a monster that we see in a lot of L&D professionals, people who create content and create assessments. And this has happened to me personally. I just get so just excited about the content that we're creating, all of the cool points that we're making, the designs, the little, you know, whatever funky little learning widgets that I use. But when it comes to the actual assessment portion of the content or the course, a lot of times I've personally just kind of failed or fallen short kind of and just kind of skimmed past that bit. And that's really where the Wicked Witch of the test is casting her spell on you and saying, you don't need to worry about the tests, because you actually really do. So this kind of test maker relies on simple question formats like true and false. And they also use just very bland structural mechanical language, nothing colorful or fun. And also, in the end, really the main thing is the assessment questions don't challenge the learner, and they're really not indicative of the actual competency. They don't prove knowledge. Once you've completed the assessment, you want to feel like, wow, if I pass that assessment, I want to feel like that was tough, but I proved my knowledge. And the Wicked Witch of the test comes in and actually kind of takes that all away, and you end up with tests that they click through, and they don't even have to even look at the content to click through to get to the end of the test. So that's a really big concern. So the main thing to cast away the Wicked Witch of the test, I always start with my biggest points first, is to create your time taking assessments. Really actually recap all of your main points in your training and flip them as questions. It's as simple as that, but it's more complicated. It's the taking the extra, 10, 30, 20 minutes to really make sure that you are creating a valuable assessment that really takes in the most important points in your training, and like I said, flips them as questions. Another big thing that I would say is to use tons of question types. Lots of LMSs give you the option to do multiple choice, short, long answer. In Litmos, I know you can do video assessments where you'll have somebody, if you have a video assessment, you can post a question and then have them act out something on video, and then they'll send in that recording, which then you can give them a 1 through 5 star rating. So that's an example of just so much better than just a simple true and false question. They actually have you going and doing something physical, and then that being your assessment. And then we also have hotspot questions, which are great, where you just kind of click on just a different area on the picture to see if you're clicking on the right area. This is a screenshot from our from our assessment creator. And this is not all the questions that we have, just a few multiple choice, keyword, free text. Lots of stuff you can do in there. A couple other things you can do is to show feedback within your assessments. So when a learner gets something right, give them correct answer feedback, saying, good job, giving them an encouragement, and also recapping their answer. So not only did they guess the answer, but when you hit send, a lot of times you might not be sure of what you just answered. So having that recap saying, correct, you answered this, and maybe even another paragraph if you wanted to, explaining why that answer is appropriate. These are kind of the L&D basics, but also, if they get the question wrong, give them some hints and also encouragement, and let them know it's not the end of the road. They can go back and take the test again. And then lastly, I would have to say, test your tests. Just do a practice run with some sample people. Get a few people to run through your content, sit down for 30 minutes, whatever, and take the assessment and do an interview with them and ask them, was that really indicative and relevant, or was that really challenging? Do you feel like that assessment proved your competency in the training matter? So yeah, this Wicked Witch of the test, she'll be on you as long as you really just take time, pay attention, and use a diverse amount of question types and do it right and pay attention to this bit of the assessment creation part, you'll be fine and you can avoid her spell. So that is the last monster, right, guys? I know we have a couple minutes for like 3 minutes for questions. Mike, you want to just go for it?
My jokes and my technical glitches took up some valuable time. I apologize for that again. Thanks for sticking with us, the people who are here to the end, putting up with all of the stuff that's happened through here. But it is a spooky, spooky time, right? So, well, the ghosts came out and did that there. So, reading through some of these here, some of the questions. Hopefully, we got quite a few answers in there. If you didn't get your question answered, feel free to reach out to us, individually. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mike Martin, and then hit me up there, or mike.martin@sap.com. I'm happy to answer your questions. So you can definitely do that. Let's see. Yeah, recording will be there. We appreciate you sticking with us. Yeah, it's been fun. I put all the jokes, by the way, in the chat because somebody asked. So that's what I was doing while Josh, I was copying, pasting them all in there. So if you did want to see them, they're in the response.
That's great. This will be up in the dojo probably tomorrow, along with the infographic that we promoted with it, which has kind of like the descriptors. And then we'll also include the slide deck for y'all too. But a recording of this slide deck and the infographic will be available in the dojo tomorrow. You'll see it on that big old welcome banner. I'll make sure it's up there for you.
One question from Aurora that I do want, I saw in here, just jumped out at me, is Aurora asks, how do I address the staff that are in leadership roles and have been with the organization for a long time and get them not to be the culture vampires? I mean, it goes back to what Sam was saying. I think it's about making that the case for training with data and like, hey, let's imagine the world, what it would be like if they did this stuff. Like, let's just go ahead and do that. Like what if? Like, what's keeping us back from doing that, right? Because I think what I've always found is that those folks, they have an idea that as Sam mentioned perfectly, is that they see training as aside from, not a part of their day, right? Of what they're trying to do. So I think it's about making that case and say, hey, look, we'll be able to close 30% more business if they just hit these things and they do all these things and they take this training and get this competency, right? Speaking in those terms rather than fluffy, like, oh, it'll make them better and they'll be happier and better it's like they'll have this competency in communication and communicating effectively. I've always found that those culture vampires, or most of them, are very data driven. I'm a touchy-feely kind of guy, right? I'm like, oh, hey, it feels good. Let's do it. It's going to be great for them. And no, I'm trying to make that emotional case. And a lot of times I run up against those folks that want to make the financial case. So I think it's about shifting your gear there. So just wanted to address that there. But thank you so much for all the wonderful questions. Thanks to the team here and the extended team with Gina behind the scenes and everyone who put together all of the graphics. If you want those, let us know. We can send them out to you and you can have them just for fun. Give me credit on the jokes. I'm just kidding, don't. I found them online too. So it's super fun, or don't if they're bad. We really appreciate your time. We love it. Come hang out with us. If you don't have Litmos now, come give us a shot. Let us show you what we got, okay? So, all right, that's all I got. Sam, Josh, anything before we head out?
No, just you guys are awesome.
I was going to let folks know that if you do want the L&D Monsters infographic, we have this as a separate downloadable PDF. So just go to litmos.com and go to the resources section of litmos.com, and you can grab this super cool infographic. And it's got all the descriptions of the various monsters if you want to have some fun with your team before Halloween, which is this weekend.
Yeah, fun. Happy Halloween, everybody. Take care, and we hope to connect with you. Connect with me and the team, and let's have some let's get back together again, okay? Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.